Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Do you love true crime, but are looking for something different?
It sounds like a sitcom.
It does.
The Benders.
The kind of assholes you should probably leave them alone.
Do you like learning about cases so off the wall they can't possibly be true?
Her wig is enormous, but it is lifted off her head by a monkey.
Do you love history, but want to hear about what they didn't teach you in school? It's just got a almost where you hang your horns sign.
Do you like laughing awkwardly about cases that are bizarre and a little strange?
They'd be able to wield so many knives with all of their little arms.
Then we have the podcast for you. Join me, Lindsay.
And me, Madison, for Ye Olde Crime,
where we discuss the funny, strange, and obscure crimes of yesteryear.
Listen every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
And we'll see you next time with another tale
as old as crime.
Hey, this is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for children. It's a true crime show. I talk about murder, drugs, sex, rock and roll. Oh hell, who am I kidding? This show might not even be suitable for some adults either. I like to drop swear words. And some people are just not comfortable with that. And if you're one of those people, you've been warned. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, CJ. I've been thinking we're almost through another whole freaking year. How'd that happen? I feel like I just blinked and the time was gone. This episode comes to you a few days later than you might be used to. And that's because it's the first episode of Season 10. I wanted to have a new release date, so I chose this day, Monday. We've been through 10 seasons, 150 episodes, and 3 years together. That is, if you haven't broken things off with me yet. Yay! To those of you who've stuck with me from the start, or binged the earlier episodes and are still with me, thank you so very much for hanging in. I know in the beginning episodes, I sound like I'm trying to complete a race with how fast I was trying to get through a story. Hopefully I do a little better now. In the middle episodes, I attempted sound effects. I received comments that the sound effects were dumb, so I stopped for the most part with the sound effects. My latest constructive criticism is to lose the background music, which I did for the last episode. Let me briefly explain why I use the background music. Mouth clicks and heavy breaths often happen to podcasters, and no matter how much fairy dust I sprinkle myself with, it happens to me too. I can't catch all of it in editing, so the background music helps to hide some of the mouth clicks and heavy breathing. However, I will stop putting the background music in for now. But will you do me a favor? Email me or DM me to tell me if you like it better with or without the music. I'd sure appreciate that. I know I used to hate background music on true crime podcasts, and honestly, I only started using it when another podcaster told me it's a great trick to hide the mouth noises. But now that I've been called out for the background music, I'm going to try real hard to go back to organic with no sound effects and no background music. Only my Patreon episodes might have a unicorn whinny sound effect. Oh, and that was such a nice segue, CJ. Please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber. If you join at the $5 level, I will name a unicorn in my stable for you. I think our next ride will be at the end of this month, and we're going to take our unicorns along the beach this time as I tell you a new story of LGBTQ crime. A story that's exclusive to Patreon-only members. I'm on Facebook as Beyond the Rainbow Pod, and we have a discussion group under the same name. All the rest of my socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Tumblr, are under Rainbow Crimes. Why? Because I freaking sparkle, that's why. This episode, we have another possibly wrongful conviction case. I'm not 100% sure what I feel about it. I start to think I know how I'm leaning, and then something else will come up that makes me start to doubt my feelings. Maybe by the end of this episode, we'll all be able to share whether we think the subject of today's case is guilty without reasonable doubt or innocent and was framed. I'd love to discuss it more with you Rainbow Warriors on any of the socials, but I think I will put it in the group on Facebook for sure. Our story takes place in the year 2005, in a little town just northeast of Dallas, Texas. The town is Royce City. It's only about a half-an-hour drive from Dallas. In the year 2000, Texas Census registered a whopping 2,800 people living there. Today, over 13,000 people reside in Royce City. One family that lived in Royce City in 2005 were the Woodruffs, Dennis and Norma Woodruff. The couple had just moved to Royce City from Heath, Texas. They were downsizing their home in order to help pay for college for their 2 adult children, Charla, their daughter, and Brandon, their son. Brandon was 19 years old. His sister was older, but not by very much. She was maybe a year and a half older. Dennis and Norma had about $300,000 in debt, so the move to a smaller, double-wide manufactured home, it just seemed like the more financially responsible thing for them to do. Charla was away in Arkansas attending Southern Arkansas University, while Brandon attended Abilene Christian University in Texas. Charla had some mental health issues which seemed to be worse when she was younger. She had tried to take her own life at the age of 14. Brandon, on the other hand, was described by high school friends as outgoing, popular, he loved animals, and he was president of his school's FFA, Future Farmers of America. A lot of the kids in school seemed to really like Brandon. Oh, there were a few that didn't. Several guys who thought Brandon's girlfriend was cute, and they wanted a chance to be with her. They even give Brandon a rough time. One of those boys was a kid named Mike Etherington. Brandon and Mike had been childhood friends, but they grew apart in high school when they started to run with different crowds. As well, Brandon was hiding a secret. A secret that many people have, and no one should be forced to divulge until they're ready. Brandon felt he might be gay. While he was away at college, Brandon would go to gay nightclubs to dance and meet guys. He even took a trip out of state to partake in some gay porn movies. Plus, it made him a little extra cash. Brandon was trying to figure out his truth. He had had a girlfriend for quite some time, but he just wasn't sure this was what he wanted. And while he and his girlfriend maintained a friendship, their girlfriend-boyfriend status was more off than on. Some accused Brandon of living a double life, but he really wasn't. He just wasn't ready to out himself to the world yet. And for those who don't understand that people need to come out on their own time schedule, those people feel like they've been lied to or betrayed by the person keeping the secret, even though that person's secret has nothing to do with anyone else. While doing the things he yearned to do around his newfound freedom of college life, Brandon's schoolwork suffered immensely. He'd been dropped from several classes, and he was afraid he might flunk out. After his parents had sacrificed so much for him to attend college, he didn't want to be a disappointment to them. Dennis and Norma were not happy when they found out Brandon wasn't doing well in school. And they told him if he wasn't going to apply himself, they weren't going to waste the money that they didn't have on his college education. It also seemed Brandon was more than a little squanderous with money. He had 2 credit cards and both were maxed out at almost $4,000. His dad had even been issued a bit of a tuition refund from Brandon's college. But Brandon took the liberty to spend it. At the age of 19, Brandon was undoubtedly making some poor decisions, and that was putting a lot of tension between him and his father. In October 2005, to further add to the tension with his dad, Brandon was starting to feel like it might be time to tell his parents he was gay. Friday, October 14th, Brandon left Abilene Christian University and he headed home to see his parents in Royce City. Dennis and Norma were still in between houses. They still had their house in Heath and their new home in Royce City. And that's because downsizing and moving takes a little while. The following day, Brandon came out to his parents. His dad was sad and worried about his son due to the higher risk that Brandon might contract AIDS and die. Dennis was still a little sore over Brandon's spending habits, but nonetheless his parents loved him no matter what, and they would continue to love him. It wasn't as though Dennis and Norma hated gays. Hell, Dennis was a huge fan of Dolly Parton, Cher, and Bette Midler, all gay icons. He just worried about his boy, and they did live in a very conservative state in the heart of the Bible Belt. The final day of that weekend was Sunday, October 16th. Dennis, Norma, and Brandon ordered a pizza for dinner at the Royce City house that night, and then after they ate, Brandon left for Abilene Christian College. But first, Brandon made a stop at the family's old house in Heath. A neighbor saw Brandon there between 10:15 and 10:45 p.m. Most likely it was thought he was picking up some more of his things. Cell phone towers have Brandon's phone pinging at Lake Roy Hubbard just east of Dallas at 10:45 p.m. He was going to pick up a friend that was traveling back to school with him at a restaurant in Dallas. Why is it important to know these times? Because sometime during October 16th and October 18th, 2005, Brandon's parents, Dennis and Norma Woodruff, were murdered while sitting next to each other on their sofa watching television in their new home in Royce City, Texas. Dennis had been shot once in his head and stabbed in his neck, face, and chest 9 times. A couple of the stabs went as deep as 5 inches. Norma had been shot 5 times, 4 times in her face and neck, and once through her hand, which was a defensive wound. Norma also suffered a 4-inch slash mark across her neck. There was a trail of blood leading from the couch to the guest bathroom and bedroom. It appeared that the killer or killers had stopped to clean themselves up. Brandon was the last known person to see his parents, Dennis and Norma, alive. Norma's mom, one of Brandon's grandmothers, had called around 9 p.m. that night to the Royce City home. Her and Norma chatted for a bit, but they didn't stay on the phone too long. Then at around 11 p.m., Charla, Brandon's sister, tried to call her folks, but her folks weren't picking up. A wellness check on Dennis and Norma was called for. An officer walked around the house, but he didn't see much, and he left. The following day, with permission of a family member, a friend of the family broke into the Royce City home of the Woodruffs. That family friend found Dennis and Norma sitting next to each other, dead on their couch. A week after the slaying of Dennis and Norma had been announced, Brandon's girlfriend's mother said a pistol was missing from their home, along with several bullets. She said she felt like Brandon had stolen it the weekend before when he was visiting her daughter. Here's the thing about that. Mike Etherington, the kid in high school who gave Brandon trouble, he had also been in that same home, but that wasn't reported, only that Brandon was there. And the owners of the home and the gun, they couldn't be sure when the gun went missing exactly. Was it a month ago? 2 months ago? A day ago? That kind of thing. But it was Mike that encouraged them to call and report the missing gun to the police. This was the first lead cops really had in the case, so they went with it and they brought Brandon in for questioning. Brandon told his sister he left his parents' home at 6:30 p.m. But the timeline didn't fit with the other times Brandon was seen by witnesses or had his phone ping on cell towers. It seemed to police Brandon was lying, and this made him seem very suspicious. The neighbor in Heath, Texas, said that they saw Brandon at his parents' old home around 10ish. And then when they got up in the morning, Norma's brand new truck was gone, and Brandon's old truck was in the new truck's place. Some say there is no way Norma would allow Brandon to take her new truck back to Abilene with him. Others say Brandon did occasionally drive Norma's new truck around. Even Charla said if Brandon begged their mother hard enough, she'd give in and allow him to take her truck. He was a mama's boy, and he and Norma had a very close relationship. The medical examiner was not able to determine a time of death for Dennis and Norma, but the police determined a time of death. They said the time of death was between 9 and 11 p.m. They based it on the phone calls made to Dennis and Norma's home. The first being at 9 p.m. when Norma spoke to her mom, and the second being at 11 p.m. when Charla couldn't get her parents to answer. This to me is just plain stupid. Police are not basing their guesses on anything scientific. You call my house at 11 p.m., I'd most likely be asleep, and I wouldn't be answering my phone. But then as soon as I tell you that, there's this little voice in my head that says, if you knew your child was on the road, you'd answer the phone, and you wouldn't be asleep because you want to know your child arrives safely to their destination. Maybe not all parents are neurotic about things like that the way I am. I guess what I'm trying to say is using 11 p.m. as the end time frame based on a missed call. And that's how you predict Dennis and Norma's time of death when a medical examiner can't even determine the time of death is something police should not be doing. Their job is to find solid evidence against a killer or killers. That's what their focus should be on, especially since their job wasn't done very well in this case to begin with. Yup, police and the Texas Rangers had a whole lot of circumstantial evidence against Brandon, but they also had a whole other suspect they barely even looked at, Mike Etherington. As soon as Brandon's parents were found, Mike inserted himself directly into the case. As you heard Mike telling the girlfriend's mother to call the police about their stolen gun. Mike himself called the Texas Rangers, and he told them on some social media, I think it was MySpace, Brandon had posted he hated his parents. They were losers, and they never did a fucking thing for him. That statement was a huge part of the probable cause that initially got Brandon arrested and put in jail. A week later, while 19-year-old Brandon sat in jail, 18-year-old Mike was being questioned by 2 Texas Rangers for over 2.5 hours. When asked about the social media thing he had reported to him, Mike said he heard it from a girl and then he saw it was taken down. Later, it was found out that information was false. Mike's interrogation, it seemed pretty high school. There was a lot of he said, she said. Mike talked about him and a couple of his buddies telling Brandon's girlfriend that Brandon was gay and that she deserved better. And then someone else had told him that they saw Brandon sitting on some guy's lap in Dallas and Brandon was all over the guy sexually. Mike seemed to have a real problem with Brandon's sexual identity. What did Brandon's sexuality have to do with the crime supposedly being investigated? Not a damn thing. But it quickly became listed as the number one motive for Brandon killing his parents. The Texas Rangers should have looked deeper into why Mike seemed to know things about the case that no one else did. For example, a computer was taken from the house after the murders. That was a fact police didn't even know about until Mike mentioned it. And then the police just kind of dropped that piece of information. If Mike wasn't there or wasn't involved in some way, how would he know a computer was missing? And why was this kid involving himself into the case? Why was he trying to paint such a shady picture of Brandon? Law enforcement stuck with Brandon being his parents' killer, as did the prosecution in the case. Prosecution's big thing was Brandon's motives to kill his folks. As I said before, number 1, Brandon was gay and just came out to his parents. Number 2, Brandon was flunking out of school. Number 3, Brandon had $4,000 of credit card debt. Number 4, Brandon wanted his mom's new truck. And number 5, Brandon wanted the life insurance money from his parents' death. Number 1, Brandon was gay. That would be the biggest nail to drive home with the jury of 12 people from the prosecution. 8 of those jurors admitted to having a problem and to having a bias against LGBTQ people. But they promised they could put their bias aside and be fair and impartial about the case. Even with the prosecution continuing to repeat in the courtroom, if Brandon could lie about being gay, he could lie about anything. Just because Brandon wasn't ready to be forthcoming to everyone about his sexual identity does not mean he lied about it. Prosecutors insisted Brandon had stolen his girlfriend's parents' pistol, and that was the murder weapon, although no gun or casings were ever found at the crime scene. Brandon had a hunting knife. His roommate at college testified to seeing it in their room. And then a hunting knife was found weeks after Dennis and Norma were murdered. The knife was inside a barn at their old home in Heath, Texas. And there was blood belonging to Dennis found on this blade. But there was no blood from Norma. And it was not Brandon's knife. Brandon's defense team mentioned a number of deficiencies made when police and the Texas Rangers were investigating this case, including not running a DNA test on a clump of hair found in Norma's hand. The hair belonged to her and Dennis's attacker. Fingerprints were not taken at the house, and blood found at the crime scene was not tested. This all makes me wonder, what did they fucking do? Oh, that's right. Interrogations of 2 teenagers, Brandon and Mike. And then a lot of cover yo ass when they realized Mike had lied about the probable cause to arrest and put Brandon in jail. Investigators danced around to make sure that their little bit of circumstantial evidence fit their narrative that Brandon was the killer. And then they neatly tucked away any suspicions or evidence they might have had on Mike. Items were seized from the crime scene, but they weren't logged in nor were they in the evidence room. Meaning if the items weren't logged, they weren't tested for DNA or dusted for prints. I wonder if they even dusted the knife found in the old barn for prints. The jury didn't find any of the sloppy investigative work a requirement to give them reasonable doubt. Defense brought in some experts and they tried to set the stage. If Brandon had killed his parents, he had only about 19 minutes to do so, and he had to do it with a gun in one hand and a knife in the other. No blood was found in Brandon's truck or his mother's truck. Had Brandon been the killer, there should have been blood. The jury still didn't find this as reasonable doubt. The defense team finally put forth some evidence about another suspect who could be the possible killer of Dennis and Norma. They alleged Mike Etherington could have killed the couple. Again, the jury didn't think this gave enough reasonable doubt. The jury heard testimonies from a number of prosecution's witnesses. They heard about Brandon's trysts at gay nightclubs, his makeout sessions with guys in public, his sex in gay porn movies. They heard testimony from Brandon's sister Charla, who testified against her brother and agreed with the police. Incidentally, Charla is a police detective in Magnolia, Arkansas. The jury never questioned where the real evidence against Brandon was. They never asked what was the proof he killed his parents. It all eventually came down to the state prosecutors presented the better case against Brandon. They convinced jurors, 8 of who were already set in their thinking, Brandon had ample time to kill Dennis and Norma. They proved Brandon had lied about some of his activities involving his sexual identity, and therefore must have lied about much more. The jury of 12, 8, admittedly biased against the LGBTQ, came back with Brandon being guilty of the capital murder of his parents. He's currently serving a life sentence without parole. Last year, the Texas Innocence Project picked up Brandon's case. I believe they're still working on it. It's been 13 years Brandon has been incarcerated. He's looking a little worse for wear, too. He once appeared to be a cute, vibrant, young gay man. Now, the sparkle that once illuminated from his eyes, it's gone. His grandma, Dennis's mom, still believes in Brandon's innocence. And Brandon still maintains his innocence. And he believes that the truth will come out someday. I think this is a case I'd like to keep an eyeball on. But in the meantime, what do you guys think? I think Brandon might have done some shitty things that could have made him look shady, made him look irresponsible, and probably downright self-indulging. Do I think he murdered his parents? I don't really know for sure. The law enforcement involved in the case, they really had most of the information at their fingertips, everything they needed to solve this case. I think there's a huge possibility the wrong kid was put away. If injustice was done to Brandon, I certainly hope that the Innocence Project of Texas can make it right. But meet me in the Facebook group and let's talk about it after you've listened. If this case is interesting to you, there's been a book published by Philip Crawford Jr. and it's called Railroaded. The author lays out all the facts in the case and he discusses why he believes Brandon is innocent. Hey, Rainbow Warriors. I've mentioned a couple times this incredible drink I found, and it's been helping me through many of my hard-to-focus days. It's called Magic Mind, and I seriously love it. It gives me the boost I need to get through my hours of researching and writing, not to mention recording and editing. Best of all, Magic Mind is made from all natural ingredients. No more of those tall cans of drinks claiming to boost my energy but giving me the jitters instead. It's recommended to drink Magic Mind in the morning for daily productivity, but I'm usually pretty productive in the morning anyway. I've noticed about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I start to really drag. My brain is foggy and I get super sleepy, and I still have so much more I have to do. So I've been drinking my Magic Mind little green shot in these lull periods that I hit. And it perks me right up. It allows me to complete projects that would normally sit until after my nap. Or till the next day when I got around to it. Magic Mind contains Bacopa monnieri. That's a nootropic that improves your attention span, your ability to process and learn new information, and your memory. It's everything I need in order to put together episodes for Beyond the Rainbow podcast. So if you're like me and you need to get shit done and kick ass while you're doing it, you just gotta try Magic Mind. I have a 20% off code to share with you guys. It's Rainbow, RAINBOW. To use it, you can go to magicmind.co/rainbow. And enter the code RAINBOW at checkout. The best part is they have a money-back guarantee. And the folks at Magic Mind like me so much, they're giving you, my listeners, an extra perk. If you get the subscription, it's a 40% off. My 40% off code only lasts 10 days, so get on that. Our true crime quickie this episode comes to us from Daytona Beach, Florida. Just recently on June 23rd of this year, Jakari Webb shot and killed an openly gay 19-year-old man. The victim's name was Talon Man. They had been talking over social media and texting for several months. Jakari was scared. He was closeted, or maybe even still trying to figure himself out, but a wave of paranoia crept over Jakari. He felt Talon had either started outing him on social media or was going to. Regardless, the two young men set up a time and a night to meet. According to phone records, the two had messaged each other 170 times between 11:30 p.m. on June 22nd and 1:51 a.m. on June 23rd. That was just a 2.5-hour time span. The conversation started with Jakari asking what he could do to see Talon, and then the two started to make plans to meet. Talon tries to direct Jakari to a Sunoco gas station as a neutral meeting place, but Jakari seems confused. Later, it becomes more clear he is not confused, but he's playing mind games. He's stalling for time. Talon gives the street intersection where the gas station is, and soon Jakari texts, "Well, come on over here." Talon asks, "Over where?" Jakari texts back, "Across the street." Talon responds, "Okay, then what?" Jakari replies, "Wait." Talon replies, "No, just come to the gas station." By now, Talon is tiring of the games and he's tired of waiting. Talon gives up and he goes home. He texts Jakari his address. He tells Jakari if he's serious about wanting to meet him, that he should just come to the address he provided. Talon never told Jakari it was his home address. Jakari texts Talon at 1:49 a.m. "I'm outside." Talon answers, "I am too." 2 minutes later, Jakari texts, "Come to the sidewalk." Talon texts back, "Okay, that's you hiding?" Officers were patrolling Talon's neighborhood that night when they heard a series of gunshots nearby. Minutes later, they found Talon's body lying in a pool of blood. Police dug right into the investigation. Talon's grandma posted a picture Talon had of Jakari on social media. On social media, she asked for anyone to please come forward if they knew who the young man in the photo was. Police spent hours upon hours checking surveillance video from the neighborhood and from the gas station. Pretty quickly, they had their suspect. Detectives armed with an arrest warrant and a SWAT team went to the location they thought they'd find Jakari at. And there he was at 8:45 p.m., standing in his front yard. He took off running, but he was apprehended and arrested. He's still awaiting trial, but he's admitted to the murder. Rest in power, Talon. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. Remember, it's not a crime to be gay, unless you're a murderer.